Good afternoon, YouTube. Welcome to Civic Minded. Today we are going to be starting the mechanical portion of the automatic window conversion. We are going to be converting the window motors and window motor wiring harnesses in the front and back windows to versions with the pulsar. So this is a driver's side motor out of a vehicle in, I believe, Northern Ireland, somewhere in the UK. Right-hand drive. My car is left-hand drive. This driver's motor is the passenger's motor in this car. So we're going to put this in the passenger door of this car today. And as you can see, it adds the extra 4 pins required for the pulsar. So we will be able to install that and have it work. Then in the back windows, we are going to install the RLX motor and the sprocket adapter and the bracket that are required to make it work. So those will get a pulsar as well. Tools we're going to need for this job: pry bar, Phillips head screwdriver, and a very small ratchet with a T20 Torx. We're also going to need a larger ratchet, a 10mm socket with an extension, an 8mm socket, and some painter's tape or masking tape or anything you got that's tape. So for the sake of it being more likely that you're going to be doing this on the passenger door if you've got the coupe, that is, you'll definitely only be doing this on the passenger door if you've got the coupe, we're going to start there. So get in the car. You don't have to open the door all the way, but it definitely helps. First, we're going to remove 2 little plastic pieces. So this one, you see there's like a little battery tab in there. You'll just squeeze that. I gotta do it with 2 hands, but you squeeze that and then you pull it out like that. And as you can see, with that released, oh God, you can't even see it, my hand's in the way. Pulls out like that, that reveals a Phillips head screw. Next, we're gonna get a pry tool on the window switch. You see there's a little notch there. Get your pry tool, wedge it in there. And you hear that pop? Damn. And then just pull it out like that. And I've actually already done some of the wiring for this mod, but unplug your window switch and remove it, and that reveals yet another Phillips head screw. With those 2 screws removed, get your pry bar under the door and pull it towards you like this. And then you see how that's kind of just hanging there? If you wiggle it up a bit, very hard with one hand, apologize, it should come out just like that. Set it aside in a safe, dry location. That will reveal access to this. This is known as the vapor barrier. You may remember from when we installed these turn signal mirrors, we had to kind of take the whole thing off. These are actually the wires for that mod. I should tidy those up a bit, but we're going to be taking it off again. As you can see, just one little cap here that you just pull out. You'll just pull it down and try not to touch this butyl rubber. It's pretty gross. If you do, get some like spray rubbing alcohol or hand sanitizer. It comes right off with that. And that will reveal access to our window motor electrical connector. So we're just gonna unplug it. And then we get to do the fun job of removing the window motor. Some people may tell you that you need to remove the regulator to remove the window motor. You do not. You need to loosen the regulator maybe, but you do not need to remove it all the way from the car. See, the motor's kind of sandwiched in there. It's actually oriented like this, so the gear is facing toward the outer side of the door. And if we use our new motor for reference, you can see there are 3 screw holes. That is where your T20 Torx ratchet is going to come in handy. So it's literally just as simple as getting your hand behind there, feeling for those Torx bolts. They're not that tricky. You can use the new motor for reference. It is a bit greasy back there, so maybe wearing gloves wouldn't be a bad idea, but get your Torx bit on the Torx bolt. It's not on there that tight. And just start loosening. Loosen all 3 of those, and then I'll tell you what to do from there. So to make getting back there a little easier, we're just going to unclip this electrical harness. If you just feel around in the back there, it should be removable by hand. Yep. See that? It comes out like that, and now we have a lot easier access. With that out, your motor's probably gonna slip and slide a little bit. As you can see, mine kind of just fell out there. And your window may move too, so be sure you're doing this inside in a garage like I am. So we're gonna have to, it's geared on here. We're gonna have to push the window regulator and it's kind of sandwiched between the regulator and the door right now. Yeah, you can see the regulator in the back there. There's a little brace that holds it on. We're gonna have to push the regulator back, so this is a bit more free to move. So to do that, we need to loosen these 2 bolts, maybe this one. I'll let you know. I believe these are 10mm, so loosen those and I'll show you what to do. They are indeed 10mm bolts, and they were rather loose, so I removed this one just for the heck of it. So now we should be able to just use the butt end of your ratchet to push, sort of brace your foot against the door, and then use the butt end of your ratchet to push as you're trying to wiggle the motor out. So just kind of like that. I don't have the tripod, so I can't really show you what that's like, but hopefully you get the idea. Just push that back, wiggle the motor till it comes out. Spoiler alert, I've actually had this out already, so it came out pretty easily. And it does appear to be identical to the British one, so we're gonna go ahead and put that in now. Installation is reverse of removal. Okay, so my recommended strategy for installation is that you get the motor in, try to get the top two, or the top and bottom bolts, Torx bolts, at least threaded so the motor's secure. Then you're gonna want to tighten the regulator bolts. Tighten the silver ones first, and then the black one. You may need to remove this little pop rivet and possibly this door connector here to do it, but you shouldn't have too many problems, and my vapor barrier's falling off here. And then once you've got all that in, the middle bolt is the one you want to tighten first, all the way. So get those tightened. Well, don't tighten it all the way. Make sure the motor can kind of freely pivot as needed. Tighten all three of those. Then I would recommend that you plug in your existing connector and just plug in your window switch, and then just test, make sure the window goes up and down as it used to. And as you can see, window works exactly as it did. It goes up and down, just doesn't have one touch yet. So now you're gonna wanna unplug this because we need to put the connector with the extra pins on. For electrical, you need a wire cutter / stripper, the wiring harness I talked about in video number 1. That comes with heat shrink tubing, as you can see. Solder, a soldering iron, heat gun, assorted wires, and safety goggles. You're also going to need a way to power these things. You can use a regular inverter for the soldering iron, but for the heat gun, you're going to need something a bit bigger. I would recommend like a big, attached directly to the battery type of inverter. You can also use a butane lighter for this, but I do not recommend that. You're also going to need some electrical tape and something to cut that with. So for soldering, you're going to want to remove the electrical tape from the existing connector, and then you're going to want to cut the connector off very close to where the wire meets the connector. We're not going to be using the old connector. We're going to be using the wires though, so try to make them as long as you can. Pay attention to which color is on which side because that has to remain the same. So in this case, blue is on the left, red is on the right. So when we solder in our new connector, blue will stay on the left, red will stay on the right. The new connector comes with a total of 6 wires, 2 thick ones, 4 thin ones. The thick ones are going to go to this existing wiring harness that they're going to actually drive the window motor. The 4 smaller, thinner ones are for the pulsar. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to run them up to where the window switch connector is. So when we install the new switch, we can just crimp a connector onto those wires and plug them into the new switch, and it's all plug and play, very easy. No need to take apart the door or anything like that. You may notice that none of the wires on the new harness, at least in my case, are color-coded. So you gotta kind of keep track of what goes where. The 2 thick ones are easy. You just keep track of which color goes to which side on the old connector and make sure it's the same as that. For the 4 thinner wires, I'll show you the pinout and the color code I used in just a few seconds here. What I did was I soldered some short color-coded wires onto the ends of those just so I can keep track of them. Once we get to wiring the switch, no questions asked. We can just wire in exactly as is using that color code. Here's the color code I picked, and it's the same on all 3 motors, and I use the same color code in all 3 doors, so there's no confusion. This is oriented at the wire side of the female connector, so basically looking at it like this. The gray rectangle on top is the locking tab, so use that for reference. The black one is ground, and that grounds inside the switch, or in the case of the driver's door, on the driver's door ground. The red one is power, so the 12 volts applied to the encoder / pulsar. I think I use both terms interchangeably throughout the video. And then the blue and green one are the actual pulse outputs. These are pulled up to 5 volts by the switch, and as the motor spins, it creates the pulses that tells the switch where the motor is, or where the window is, rather. For Honda's numbering conventions, blue is number 3, black is number 4, green is number 5, and red is number 6. So that's a convention I use throughout the entire mod. So this way, when I'm ready to wire the switches in, it'll go very smoothly. To prepare for soldering, you're first going to want to strip about 1.5 centimeters of insulation off the wires, just long enough so they can be twisted together. If you've got the same harness as I do, that's about what's stripped already and some change. Then at this point, I would recommend that you slip the heatsink over the harness wires, because it'll stay there very easily, and if you forget it, you have to desolder the entire thing and do it all again. That's just bad luck. You don't want to have to do that. So get the heat shrink on now. Then you're going to want to twist the wires together as shown here. Then you're going to want to apply your soldering iron to the bottom of the twisted wires and apply your solder to the top. Do not apply the solder directly to your iron and then drip it onto the wires, because that creates what's known as a cold solder joint, which is a very bad connection. It's going to be the same for the 4 smaller wires, the only difference being you have a lot more wiggle room, so you can use the soldering helping hands if that makes it easier. Then when all is said and done, slip your heat shrink tubing over, fire your heat gun. The heat shrink will do what its name implies, shrink over the wires and make them nice and tight. One note, do not fire your heat gun at this plastic. It will melt. One thing to note, now that your window motor wires are slightly longer, this track here is what the window glass slides on. So get a zip tie here, get some other extra electrical tape. Make sure this does not go in there. We went ahead and threaded our new wiring harness through the hole that the window switch wiring harness goes through and zip tied it. Perfect length. All right, now all we gotta do is get the door back together, and we are done with the lower part of the door. Your back doors will open similar to how your front door opened. Note that if this is your first time opening the door door handle may come with it, and peel this off. If that happens, there are some tabs there. You just squeeze those all. It'll release the door handle. There's one extra step for removing the butyl rubber, and that is unplugging this power door lock connector. So we do that, and then we're gonna start peeling from here. We need to take the entire window regulator out on the side. Don't worry, it's not that bad. But we need access to this big hole here, so we're gonna be peeling from here. So get this little rubber stopper out, and I just broke my vapor barrier. Lovely. Start peeling down. And once you get to this connector harness here, you'll just reach in, squeeze that, which I need my hands free for, but you get the idea. I got very lucky and was able to open my door all the way, but if you are less lucky and your butyl rubber is hitting your door sill, just get a paper towel and some painter's tape and tape the paper towel to that so you don't get any butyl rubber on your nice door panel. If that does happen, just get some rubbing alcohol and a microfiber towel, spray it, it'll come right off. All right, so the first step is going to be to remove the window glass from the window regulator. And to do that, put your car into position 2, notice my headlights are on, reconnect your window switch, and just lower the window until you'll see this hole here. You see how we have access to both bolts there? Just those 2 bolts, they're 10 millimeter, take those out. Once those are out, and you're probably gonna need an extension for that one, you can go ahead and push the window glass up by hand. It's not that heavy, it's counterweighted, I believe. Well, not counterweighted, but it's designed so you can easily push it up, and then secure it with something like painter's tape, or I use aluminum tape first time I did it, but painter's tape seems to work fine. So just get it up. I would say 3 pieces of painter's tape at least. This is, believe it or not, this is what the workshop manual says to do, so that's how I did it. And with those out, we can go ahead and remove the regulator. It is held in by 3 bolts, those 3 black ones down there, and 1 nut. So get those out and I'll show you what to do. So to get the regulator out, you're first going to want to push it to the side like this. You see how that loosened up? The electrical connector on the motor is still kind of holding it back. I'll just get in there and you'll feel it. It's maybe easier to unplug while this is loose actually. So unplug that. This thing is, you see how this is kind of swinging here? What I did was I kind of bent this forward, and that actually came out easier on the left side. So try not to scratch your paint. This is steel, so it will rust if it's scratched. But yeah, you see how easy that was? Now we can go ahead and take the motor off. So to remove the motor from the regulator, there are 3 8mm bolts. Take those out. You notice they're in the same spots as the holes, the unused holes, and on the adapter piece there. So take those off. With those off, you should just be able to do that. And you see the motor's really greasy, so that's why I was wearing gloves. And if you flip it over, you'll see the acceptor there, and you notice that that's the same shape as that. Then what you want to do is this piece goes on the bottom, so let's try to get it so they're aligned. It may take a couple of tries, and you may have to spin it and move that up a bit. So goes in just like that, and Now we can get some of our new bolts, and we're going to orient them so it goes in this way so we don't have any clearance issues. And tighten them up. Once again, not too tight. Just like that. For this hard one here, I would recommend that you get your socket on that end and then get like a pliers, or if you've got a wrench thin enough, that's probably better, but get something on that end, just hold it as you're tightening it so it tightens securely. Otherwise, if you just spin this, this is just gonna spin with it and it's not gonna do anything. So that's tightened. I would recommend at this point that you go ahead and reinstall it in your door. Replug in your window switch, which you'll actually need to do this to realign the window holder anyway, but just test, make sure it works. If it sounds like it's straining more than it did with your stock motor, you probably have this too tight, or your motor, or this motor's bad, but more likely you have this too tight, so try loosening it and try again. And as you can see, works exactly as it should. Oh. Yeah, it's not tightened all the way, but we'll get this so it's aligned like that. Now we can tighten all those and put everything back together. I'll get this portion back together. We're gonna do the wiring next, so I'm gonna leave the door open, but yeah. So to gain access to your wiring harness, you can put the top portion of the vapor barrier back and then lift up the bottom, just right where the speaker would be right here at the door hinge, and just tape it up with some painter's tape like that, and you'll see you'll have nice easy access. This is kind of tight. The actual plugging and unplugging is kind of tight, but you can get it out like that, and if you squeeze these tabs here, that's how the entire harness comes out, so you have so much more room to work on it. So this harness will go in just as the one on the front did, same pinout, and note the blue and white on the left door. There is brown on the left and yellow on the right. Just like that, just coil that up, put it back in the door, plug it in, make sure it works obviously, and put your door panel all back together. And that's pretty much it. All the mechanicals are in, and we've got the wiring all set to go for the pulsar. So once we connect our, once we get our Acura switches in here, we'll have this wiring all ready to go. We can just plug it right in, all plug and play. It's beautiful. In the next video, I will show you how to make the harnesses for these switches. We'll install the switches, and then we will calibrate the window system so it actually works. And yeah, it's coming along. So you basically have an Acura window system right now. As always, if you have any questions, feel free to leave a comment, shoot me an email, aidencivicminded@gmail.com. And I close with, have fun, drive safe, and I will see you in the next one.